And we are also broadcasting live on Facebook again. So looks like that worked today, which is excellent. And we're excited to go through the Q3 business update. I think it's been a definitely an interesting quarter for everybody. And I'm excited to get started here. So my name is Jason Remillard. I am the CEO of LandStar and the CEO and founder of Data443, which is our operating subsidiary. Today's web call and cast is being recorded and posted in the investor relations section of the website at www.data443.com. Additionally, it is being live broadcast as well. Before we begin, I'd like everyone to refer to page 2 of the presentation, which I will pull up now, to remind our listeners to read our cautionary statements, as we will be discussing some forward-looking statements and information throughout the call. This posting and presentation will also be made available online shortly after the call. Today, I'll be joined by 2 guest speakers as well, which we tend to do on every call if possible. First on the call will be Jim Coyne, Modevity's president and co-founder, and then additionally we'll be having Jay O'Donnell, who is the founder and CEO of N8 Identity. Both Jim and Jay will be providing an update and overview of the respective companies and how our combined capabilities help strengthen the foundation for Data443 and the long term. All right, you see the screenshots of our images, and you notice that there's 3 J's presenting today. So I just noticed that this morning, which is kind of an interesting thing. What we'll go is we're going to go into some of the agenda items as well. So we're going to go through a quick overview. We'll go over some business highlights to date. Of course, we'll have our 2 colleagues spending a few minutes on the product line, the history, and the future of what it looks like from their perspective. We're going to go through some of the market opportunities of the combined solutions and some of the new market opportunities that we're exercising and demonstrating both in a capability and future forecasting perspective. And then finally, we'll be going through the blueprint for growth. We do have a specific and organized approach towards the organization of the company, the products, the acquisitions, the customer base, and attacking this data security problem, which is prevalent in the rest of the industry. So what I wanted to show first off in the slide is where we are today. We have many comments about, what is the overall story? What are you trying to do? Why are you acquiring? Why are you building? What is the final approach? And as the name of Data443 connotates is, we are centered around the security of information in general. This information can be personal, it can be corporate, it can be social, but in general, it is considered to be sensitive information. From our perspective, we don't really care where it is. It can be in the cloud, it can be local on your laptop or your desktop, it can be on 10,000 employees' machines or mobile devices, and it can even be shared. From our perspective, all data should be considered sensitive until it's not considered sensitive, and we're going to be deploying and developing solutions to provide for that market opportunity. So today, obviously, what we have in place is we have the Classy Docs product line in place and actively being marketed, piloted, and purchased. We also have the Airlock product, which we just recently announced a close on during Q3, which had the, just after Q3, which has the innate ability to distribute and secure content. We're going to talk a little bit more about what that really means, both for the market and for the company. And then, of course, just recently we announced the letter of intent to acquire the Access Hub and the N8 Identity product line. We will be talking about how identity governance, identity access management is central to data security in general, and certainly enforcing and managing privacy and compliance activities. Of course, the other acquisition we completed as well recently, which was the Wordpress Gdpr framework plugin. A really interesting acquisition for us, gives us great visibility into not just the marketplace, but into a large swath of additional customers. These are customers that primarily would not be touched during via normal marketing programs. These are systems administrators, security architects, and other folks who run the corporate presence and potentially the e-commerce operations for their businesses. So the WordPress GDPR framework is a very interesting approach for us, and what we wanted to do is spend some time on that today as well. Competitively, what we've reported is that the unaudited gross revenue for the future year would be around 3.2 million based on trailing revenues of the organizations, with an EBIT contribution of over $1 million. These are based on, again, unaudited financials of the previous organizations. We'll be reporting more on what that looks like going forward. What you do see here, though, however, is, of course, we have 4-point solutions to handle data security, regardless of the location. And as we go forward into the near future, we'll be adding more capabilities to that. If you look at the function of protecting any sort of information on any resource, you'll see that there's a lot more involved than just, classifying it or securing it or identifying it. We need to do things like optimize and retain that information. We need to manage consent to the information, the processing of information, and the storage of information. Global privacy compliance requirements are growing by the day. Certainly, we have new privacy compliance in California, which would be effective in a year and a bit. Additionally, we have new privacy compliance in South America. And of course, what we are fully expecting is that the whole of the United States will have a overarching GDPR-like classification and global privacy compliance requirement. Another major requirement that we've been finding within our customer POCs and architecture discussions is that there's an enhanced requirement now for mapping and tracking of data. This is delineating physically where it's stored, whether it's in a data store, whether it's in a data store in the cloud, a hybrid cloud infrastructure, a private data center, or an outsourced data center. The physical location of that information is very critical. Additionally, tracking where that information goes, point to point, when it's moved, is also very important towards data compliance and data governance requirements. So we're making some investments in this space. Additionally, what's also really important, obviously, for data protection is enabling and securing the devices themselves. This could be formerly known as a DLP or endpoint security technology. We have announcements coming in this space in the near term. We feel very strongly that a coordinated approach between things like data classification, identity governance, encryption, and distribution are really central to the endpoint security dilemma that we're facing today. Stand by for information on that. Of course, also what we have is, some announcements already done today around the HIPAA and other personal privacy information that's healthcare related. The HIPAA governance compliance policy is quite strong, of course, but there are extensions to it that need to be resolved for the end user community. HIPAA is really focused on the data processor and its requirements for protecting that information. But the freedom of that information and the ability for that information to be self-managed, referred to other sources, stored locally, are all very difficult to comply with for organizations. So we have a fair amount of offerings coming in that space. When we say near term, the focus is to get these done as soon as possible. Some might be acquisitions, some might be product development. In other cases, it is an OEM solution as well. At the end of the day, though, we are finding that these requirements are really germane to existing conversations our customers are having with us today. When we look at the full acquisition and product pipeline, and this is again, near term to longer term, depending on what your definitions of term are, we're going to be adding more capabilities in this space. Again, centered around the EPIC or the conversation of sensitive information protection, management, and distribution. We need to do a little bit more on top of that. Part of that is going to be orchestrating and alerting on information. This could be information stored in a database that's been egressed to another database. It could be alerting and orchestrating a security incident response system, or a SIM, with additional payload information. Another piece that we're finding is a big requirement for customers, again, protecting this information, is really focused on optimizing and retaining that information. If you look at anything that's forensic-based, in the e-discovery space especially, the retention of information, versions of a Word document, for example, or all Twitter history for the company's official Twitter accounts, or intra-organization chat via Skype or Slack or other types of technologies, all need to be retained. Financial services have had these requirements for years. We're finding many other organizations, for example, municipal governments in the United States, have Freedom of Information Act requirements that are being placed on them. This means much more information has to be retained and available in a searchable interface. We will have some announcements shortly in that space. When we also look at other technology, specifically social media, social information that might be shared or privately coordinated with, and other information such as information stored in a ledger, a private repository, or a cross-linked repository between organizations, such as Identity Federation, or a major link point for identity, such as a Microsoft or a Google. We're finding a lot more requirements around tracking that identity, managing the identity, enabling self-management of that identity, and in the ultimate case, enabling that identity to be shared on an ongoing basis, completely controlled by that end user. We're rapidly approaching a space where there's full self-governance, full self-reporting, and full self-control over a person's identity and the related data within other organizations. So we'll have additional product offerings and development in this space. You will see this roadmap filling out quite nicely in the next quarter or two. And additionally, what's driving a lot of this, of course, is global privacy compliance requirements. These requirements are growing, as we see with major announcements across the geographies of the world, but also they're becoming more defined and rigid. So much like Sarbanes-Oxley was 10 plus years ago when it was first announced, there was legislation put in place. There was, of course, some rules and some guidelines, but a lot of it needed to be court tested, much more refined and defined from a capability and requirements perspective, and then it had to be enacted by the businesses. We're finding, whether you call it GDPR or CCPA or whatever governance or privacy compliance you're looking at, we are finding that legislation still has a runway in front of it to be defined and more clearly communicated towards the practitioners, the support people, and of course the governments in place. So that space is quickly moving for us, and we're finding a lot of new requirements being driven through that. In addition to that is, of course, the whole consent management of the end users. This is a very big part of global privacy compliance. So we're putting a lot of effort into this space, and you'll see more on that shortly. Okay, I don't know who that was. I will mute that. All right, thank you. In addition to the long-term pipelines, we've of course closed the Airlock acquisition recently announced. We have signed the LOI with N8 Identity. And what we have also done is formed more worldwide industry partnerships. Those were defined and press released, of course, over the last few months. What we're also doing in that scenario is actively managing a lot of new partnerships were focused on data privacy and data compliance. This is really important for our existing and new product lines to be able to be promoted through. And what we're also doing is, of course, involving many of our partners to help us grow from a marketing perspective and the ability to quickly adopt new products that we're introducing to the channel. Indeed, these resellers on a worldwide perspective are our growth path and our ability to market the solutions very quickly. Essentially a global sales force that is highly motivated to promote and support our products. What I'm going to do now is turn it over to Jim for some quick comments about the marketplace and what he's been doing from a long-term perspective on the product side, what he's seen on certain engagements with customers, new and old, and certainly changes in this space, specifically really focused on the board management software, which has been highly successful, long-term used from the customer perspective, and on having a very good run.
Thanks, Jason. First, I'd like to say hello to all of our attendees on this call, and also I'd like to say that I'm very happy to be part of Data443 and very pleased with the transition process to date. So a little bit of history about the Airlock Platform. We launched the product in 2007, and in 2008 we signed our first really big enterprise deal with Cisco Systems. With Cisco, we expanded Airlock onto at the time, the new iPhone, and subsequently into the Android and Mac platforms as well. And from there, it was off to the races. Over the last 10 years, we've survived many detailed customer security reviews, as you can imagine, given our client list. We're currently hosted in the Microsoft Azure cloud and have rolled out services internationally with Azure in several different geographies. Our end users are worldwide. Our solution and its encrypted content is whitelisted in thousands of corporations and educational institutions. Board management, as Jason mentioned, is just one of our solutions, though it is a leading use case for Airlock, and major Fortune 500 corporations, as well as several very privacy-conscious companies, use it regularly. Some of the new features that are in development today include iPhone Face ID and fingerprint identification on the platform. So we're really excited to leverage the partner and sales channel, Data443, and we're looking forward to big things in the future. Thank you.
Great, Jim. Thanks very much. I might rope you in for questions at the end if we have a couple, so
sure.
Just stand by on that one. Thanks. All right, Mr. O'Donnell, you are up. I appreciate any commentary you might have on the solution and any sort of points you might want to bring up.
That's great, Jason. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes, we've got you now. Thank you. Yeah. Go ahead, Jay.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So just to reiterate what Jim said, we're also happy to be part of the Data443 family. I'd like to introduce you to N8 Identity. We focus our energies in the identity and access management market, where we've been operating for nearly 2 decades. As you can see from our client list as well, we've integrated approximately 1 billion identities over that period of time. The organization is really segmented into 3 primary business lines. Professional services, where we assist customers with road mapping, architectural assessments, product selection, implementation services around identity and access management technologies. The second business line is our managed services and support team. So this area of the business is really to package and assist customers with some of the complex technology requirements around managing some of these technologies, especially in light of today as organizations are operating in increasingly a hybrid mode where they have technology on-premise, but also out in the cloud. And we assist them and help them make that migration from the current state to the future end state. And the last area of our business is our Identity and Access Governance Products Group, where we have 3 products. On the product side, our primary product is the Access Hub Enterprise, which is an identity and access governance platform that runs on Microsoft Azure. And this has been really the culmination of 4 years of R&D work that we've been doing in this space, in addition to almost 2 decades of customer-specific challenges that they see and they have in this space. The technology, we believe, is going to be very disruptive because the timeline to implement is in days or weeks, rather than traditionally other products in this marketplace have taken months or years to integrate. We heavily use artificial intelligence in the product to eliminate a lot of the manual processes with traditional identity and access governance products. And because of that, ultimately what this provides to organizations is the ability to be more agile. So you don't need to go through 18-month long upgrade cycles as traditional products. We have several active pilots underway with these products. And we will be reporting or announcing customer wins as we move forward. The organization has a pretty solid engineering QA support and consulting practice capability with some methodology, including our IAM framework and our target operating model, which help customers operationalize these technology. And the last thing I want to say is we are just launching our Cannabis Privacy Services platform, which was recently announced to be deployed in other jurisdictions. We are actively working on one initiative right now with an existing customer in this space. So we're really, really excited about that.
Great, Jay. Thank you very much. I think what I wanted to call out for everyone as well who is listening is that there is a focal conversation that we're working on, which is really specifically rapid customer engagement of technology, very simplistic adoption of the technology for their customers. This is a really important piece in information security that a lot of organizations get wrong, to be honest, and also very rapid time to value for them. You're seeing a really big focus on cloud-based services. Both of these technologies, for example, run specifically in the Azure framework. There are others that are running that can be ported to Amazon and public and private cloud solutions. But in all cases, including Classy Docs as well, we're able to turn up a solution to have it in front of an end user or a customer, sometimes just minutes, but minimally an hour or 2 at the most, and they're able to consume and get immediate value of the technology. A lot of organizations today are not looking for a large upgrade program, an 18-month architecture and design session. They have immediate, specific, and high-risk requirements that need to be solved very quickly. And that's what the product line is really focused on from the technology perspective. Thanks, Jim. And Jay, we'll be back to you in a few minutes. More business highlights covered here. Number one, big focus for us, of course, has been the ledger blockchain world in general. Ripple has been a primary one that we've been working with. I will say that I work with Ripple engineering sometimes daily on new versions, new updates, and stability of the ledger framework. We're proud to contribute to the framework. This is very different from what you might expect, like Bitcoin mining or any other sort of solution. We feel Ripple is going to be one of the leading frameworks going forward for financial services institutions. So we're investing with spare capacity in our network to support the Ripple framework. Probably the biggest benefit for us recently has been that we were announced to be one of the 11 organizations listed on the unique node list, which is essentially a reference list from Ripple that they recommend to be a primary validator for partner network organizations. A very big announcement for us. Of course, as well, earlier this year, we were made available on the gov.uk digital marketplace. What that really means is that the ClassyDoc solution is able to be procured by anyone in the UK government on a fast path perspective. Much like being on the GSA schedule for the US government, you're able to be procured by any organization very quickly without the normal procurement and contracting issues that go with it. This is supported and sponsored by one of our great partners in the UK, so we're appreciative for that efforts. We expect to add the rest of our product line as we develop it and get it in a funnel to the same marketplace and additional government marketplaces as possible. Another big piece of technology that we've been working on and we will be releasing to the public shortly, I hope, is a personal use version of ClassyDocs for Facebook users. An interesting twist on classification and governance. Essentially what the product does today is consume your existing Facebook information with your approval, of course, and we will classify the information we detect and find and highlight that for you. Anything that we would consider or you may consider to be PII, or personally identifiable information, will be highlighted for you or the user and able to be removed or otherwise archived and removed from your Facebook profile. An interesting twist on classification and governance. We feel this will expand the Data443 brand, of course, into other spaces. This solution will also be made available from an OEM or white label perspective for select customers who have a large user base behind them. Additionally, as Jim had mentioned earlier, that during the LOI to close phase with the Airlock product team, we closed our first joint customer contract with the product team, a rather large educational institution who has engaged Airlock specifically to handle their board management solution. So it was a good exercise for us to go through, joint bidding, procurement, all the good stuff that goes with onboarding a new customer. It also gave us good exposure to the internal processes that Airlock does to manage and onboard technical customers as well. So that was an exciting win for us as well. As Jay had mentioned, we have also launched the Personal Privacy Compliance Service to support the medical marijuana industry, which of course is already in use in Canada in a certain governmental organization, and is going to be offered to related US and other medical marijuana consumers and vendors. We've had some recent press and announcements centered around this new technology. It is a packaged offering. It is technology, it is a little bit of services, and some architecture and design that goes into not just facilitating transactions, but securing the identity at rest and the related information surrounding that identity, which could be as simple as web browser logs, CAPTCHA form submissions, and/or consent management as well. We find that this space is going to be growing significantly, not just the market side itself, but also the requirements for privacy and governance capabilities that many vendors will be looking for. This space is, of course, very privacy-centric. The information is very sensitive, and many personal information consumers will want to have much stronger management and protection of their information. So that is a growing space for us, which really brings together much of our data protection capabilities into one focused use case. Additionally, we announced favorable debt restructuring activities that we did during a trip to New York recently. A bunch of things have been done as part of that transaction. Essentially, we waived, Blue City has waived the $100,000 commitment fee related to the equity purchase agreement. We also both agreed to cancel the equity line that was in place, and all debt has been restructured into a more agreeable and shareholder-friendly format. Full details have been related into the Q3 financial report, but in a nutshell, the debt restructuring results in a very large reduction of the derivative liability risk reported on the balance sheet, as well as a decrease in the dilution to current shareholders as part of the transaction. We were excited to get that piece of work done. It took a fair amount of work and everyone partnering together to find the right solution and get a better agreement in place. More updates on the corporate actions. As we announced this morning, we have completed the 2-year audit via PCAOB certified auditor. This is a great step for us to go forward and move into our next phase on the corporate side. We've also engaged a professional CPA firm called HPG in the Raleigh area. Many decades of support in the CPA industry. Also, it is a large firm style approach, which has been beneficial for our company to have a significant team behind not just the accounting and the financing, but also to assist in normal financial transactions and provide consulting services for acquisitions and other types of activities. We have 2, at least, additional accretive acquisitions in the pipeline for 2019. We'll be announcing those as we firm up terms and offers. These activities have been ongoing for quite some time, but not quite at the LOI stage. Additionally, with our partner PLR on the investor relations side, who's been doing a great job, I feel, managing and supporting our shareholders. They're also producing some non-deal roadshows in December that we're actively looking to book shortly, and some conference opportunities in Q1 of 2019. Additionally, as any follower of our Twitter or investor relations list will know, we've had research coverage initiated by 2 analyst firms. We're looking forward to seeing more start covering the opportunity that Data443 represents. As discussed before, we have a large global partnership engagement activities going onwards today. We've onboarded at last count at least 5 new partners in Q3, which now gives us coverage in over 40 countries worldwide. This is really important for the organization to manage, specifically because, again, it is a Salesforce expansion activity. It gives us access to hundreds of salespeople who are trained in our product. They are the ones that are able to find opportunities for us. They are the ones to present and be face-to-face to a customer, and also to manage the complicated use case around proof of concepts and even product deployments. In most cases, the partners also provide technical and architectural support as well for the products, which again is very beneficial for us as an organization. It keeps our staff headcount lower and significantly expands the footprint and availability of capabilities. Of course, this partnership arena is really important to establish a pipeline and a capability to distribute and sell more products through that channel. Every time we announce a new product offering, we of course train up the partner organizations. An interesting segue on that has been last week when we announced the letter of intent with N8 Identity. The next day we hosted a partner-only session to go through the acquisitions and what it means for their offerings as well, which was very well attended. So we're excited for the continued growth of our partner channel, really important. If you look to our competitors and normal information security technology operations, the partner channel is integral to their success. From a market opportunity perspective, we'll be going through the product line very quickly, understanding or educating about why we do certain things and what the product value has in the marketplace. As previously announced, we've done the WordPress Gdpr framework. It's a very powerful, very established product offering in the WordPress technology arena. It has top positioning in their personal app store, which was really important for us as well. And the main point is it delivers very easy to use tools that helps anyone comply very quickly to privacy legislation, whether it's GDPR, CCPA, LGPD, PIPEDA, or others. The main point with the technology, of course, is that It has a wide reach and a very rapid user support base. If you look at the publicly available support ticketing system and commentary, as we've taken over the technology, cleaned up the code, and added feature enhancements, we've had a very large and significant growth on the satisfaction level. What's really important in this technology specifically is we are able to reach highly technical administrators and some smaller organizations or personal customers, and introduce new product lines to that technology as well. So what we also announced recently was the integration of Classy Docs directly to the WordPress plugin. In this case, it's extending the capabilities of the WordPress plugin to search all enterprise data in addition to any web-based data or WordPress data that it might have searched before in response to a privacy compliance request. So it's a great extension to the product line. It brings the enterprise data set to the public-facing arena, and it rapidly engages and supports any sort of subject access request that a customer might have. Additionally, the WordPress plugin is being brought into our enterprise conversations. Over the past few weeks, we've had many demos with large and very large organizations, and we've introduced the consent management, the capabilities to do a SAR, and also the capability to remediate SARs and display results to requesters very quickly through a very simple web front end. You'll see more activities around consent management, cookie management, and other functions that privacy requirements generally drive. Another market opportunity which has recently been established with the integration and work with N8 Identity has been, of course, the HIPAA and cannabis space. Really what's important for us in this space is going back to the picture of the data security and data compliance activities that are generally required in the enterprise IT space is being extended considerably and driven much wider and faster via the legalization aspects of cannabis. HIPAA has always been, like I said, a very robust and important legislation. The cannabis-related activities are driving significant volume on the privacy and compliance requirements. The combinative solution of N8 Identity, the ability to classify information and discover PII via Classy Docs, and now to deliver it directly to an end user via Airlock is the ultimate vision for this product line. We've been demonstrating and talking about it to customers far and wide from a remediation perspective, and have found that the end-to-end solution, including, again, distributing simple things like invoices or payment receipts via a secure technology like Airlock, has grown and been has been met with a lot of excitement. So a lot more coming on that space. We'll have more product information posted shortly, in addition to some public use and demonstration capabilities for customers to rapidly consume and demonstrate the technology to their own compliance folks. Another big one that I spoke about a little bit as well has been the Facebook and social media capabilities. The idea here again is we're going to be extending the capability of Classy Docs into those realms, be able to deliver results to the requesters quickly and easily, and also do some very interesting personally identifiable discovery activities. These activities are wide-ranging throughout the industry. What's interesting is what we've found is that a piece of information that might be considered sensitive in Germany is certainly probably not considered sensitive in the US, but might be becoming sensitive in Canada. So the information set that we're learning throughout the classification and PII identification activities driven by this technology will be put back into the enterprise side as well, and also integrated to offerings for larger service providers. A good example of that might be a telecom looking to identify all PII-related information to their customers that might be stored within the enterprise, which is a very big ask. They'll be leveraging our libraries of what is considered PII or sensitive, either by users, by government, by regulations, or a crowdsourced option around what other people might find to be sensitive or not. At the end of the day, the discovery and identification exercise is really only as valuable as the back-end libraries and understanding what can and should be considered PII. Wanted to cover the competition quickly. We've also disclosed some of this in the previous call. What I've done with this slide is broken it up a little bit so competitors can be identified and better correlated against the solution. What you will find with most of the competitors listed in the next few slides is that they are really stovepipe and single focused. Most customers require a lot more than what is just provided by one vendor. I will give you an example of a large RFP we're working on today for a large US firm. They have requirements that span not just one or two of our products, but actually 3 and 4 of them. So we were able to respond with yeses in every single column, demonstrate an existing product capability that's in the market, and also in most cases demonstrate a high user base that's already using that capability. What's also interesting in that RFP and a few others I've seen is that they're specifically asking what needs to be built and what is available today. So what that's connotating to us as a sales organization is that many organizations have these wide-ranging requirements that span many different technologies, are not willing to wait for it to be built and need it very quickly. So in this case, for Class C docs, we have some very specific competitors that we message and compete against. Varonis being probably the biggest one with a large market cap and doing very well, of course, on the NASDAQ. Titus, Bolden, James, Spirion, Watchful, and Secure Islands have all been acquired in varying fashions over the past 2 years. We've been watching that industry rapidly consolidate. In several cases, that technology has been built into another product set. Microsoft, for example, Watchful is another good example, where a larger organization has acquired that technology and built it into their data governance, data classification, and data security product lines. Data classification is a foundation and the raw capability required for any sort of data protection activity. On GDPR, CCPA, LGPD, or any other data privacy compliance requirement, there are specific capabilities required by the customer to enable things like an end user asking for their data, an administrator being able to deliver select pieces of information to the requester, enabling the end user to request deletion or anonymization of their information. Another big requirement that we're finding with these legislations is that there's a lot of requirements placed on the data processor to identify specifically where information is, who's using it internally, and exactly what it's being used for. These privacy legislation drive those kind of requirements. As you're seeing with the California Acts compared to the GDPR Act, they're starting to all look the same. And certainly the requirements are rounding out to those really core pillars. What that's doing on the product side is that it means a lot more focus on the user experience and also on data mapping and data identification capabilities. So we've combined, specifically even because of the RFPs we've been seeing, OneTrust and Big ID from a competitive standpoint to our privacy compliance and governance solution stack. You'll see quite a bit of activity from both of those organizations. They're high quality, they do a great job, but they are separate and distinct. And we'll see that during our RFP processes, we've been seeing competitive requirements that at least transcend these two types of organizations' capability set. So a lot of work going on in that space. We're excited for the future on that. Our existing investments in WordPress and the workflow components that we have in place are starting to pay off from that perspective and deliver a lot of customer value in a single package. Another quick coverage on Airlock. We've covered this in the last slide deck as well. I wanted to highlight that there's really 3 or 4 primary competitors in specifically the board management space. A lot of activity in the past 2-3 years in that space. And we're seeing extensions of the board management product being used for data, general data security, sharing, and compliance activities. So stand by on that. There's a lot of activity happening in that space, but it is good to highlight who we go up against generally head-to-head on any sort of competitive standpoint with the customer. Last one, but not least, of course, is our friends at N8 Identity. Primary competitors from a solutions perspective are Okta and SailPoint Technologies, both very large, very professional, and very good product lines. But also customers and partners are looking for options. Certainly, there are some interesting delineations in the product sets between them and other major vendors that do identity and governance activities, and storage of identity as well. The consumption, management, and usage of identity is becoming a new battleground, essentially, in this space. And we're seeing a lot of activities, jostling for position, and other types of corporate actions that are pretty interesting to be watching. So N8 Identity is going head-to-head with these folks generally when we come up to a competitive situation on the product side. Doing a quick time check here. Our primary blueprint for growth has been to look for acquisitions and product lines that really fit that data story, that cloud with everything surrounding it. All of the acquisitions, of course, are going to be accretive to the bottom line. They bring to us more than just revenues, though. They bring customers, they bring product capability, and now they bring customers that we can cross-market and sell into. We're really excited to get started on some of those activities. We spent a fair amount of effort at the end of Q2 and all of Q3 on our marketing plan, which includes, involving the analysts, inbound and outbound marketing, and cross-marketing between acquisition and other client lists that have been secured. The sales plan includes focus on monthly recurring revenue. Customers who are paying, annually or doing perpetual licenses, we're actively converting over to subscription basis, which is really important for us on an ongoing basis, of course, and has a very high EBIT contribution as well. The acquisition strategy I've been covering a little bit. Probably the big points I wanted to cover out as well is that there's minimal product overlap and corporate overlap with the organizations. We're finding that most of the organizations have very strong technology and people that go with it, which are obviously highly valuable to the organization. And we're looking for a strong core competency outside of the product, whether it be sales, marketing, analysts, or vendor partnerships that we can also leverage. You'll be finding an engagement with more of the historical IT analyst, the analyst relations area as we go forward through Q4 and Q1 next year. That requires a significant investment of not just monetarily, but time as well. These analysts, folks like Gartner and Forrester, are really important to the procurement lifecycle, of course, and many customers are requiring us to be involved in things like the Wave and the Magic Quadrant. Each of the technology and acquisition offerings that we're looking at are involved in some way, shape, or fashion with these analysts, have been in the past or are currently. So that's a great opportunity for us to leverage as well. All right, we'll wrap up with this last slide, then we'll go over to Matt for Q&A. At the end of the day, why invest with Data443? Number one, we're achieving economies of scale with Airlock and N8 Identity acquisitions. Really good integration on the organization side, which I'm happy to see. We focus very heavily on that relationship and making sure that it is done quickly, efficiently, and cost effectively. We have 2 additional acquisitions minimum in the pipeline for Q4. We're looking forward to getting those in, but no commitment specifically on timelines. And of course, our industry partners really have benefited our sales organization as well. So we're looking forward to providing more product and capabilities to that sales force for end of marketing. Our 2-year audit has been completed, which is a significant milestone for the company. We're really focused and excited to getting that and moving on to the next steps of that procedure. And of course, in general, we have a very strong macroeconomic, macro environmental conditions that are focused on a greater urgency for data security, compliance, and governance classification. Every single day, we hear about not just breaches, but also misidentification of information, misstorage of it, misplacement of it, and in general, just unknown capabilities of the organization having personally identifiable information that may or may not be allowed or enabled by the end consumer. As the fines start adding up, organizations are treating personal privacy and governance very seriously, and they're looking for options to reduce their risk and exposure to this, new regulatory environment. So a lot of times organizations don't have to suffer a loss or have a major breach to identify and respect the fact that they have a risk. In a lot of cases, they are looking simply to reduce the risk and their overall exposure to that risk framework. All right, thank you for your time. I appreciate that. I think we have time for some Q&A. Let me make sure that we have Matthew available to be enabled.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
All right, great. Pardon me, I was checking out the chat on Facebook. We got a wonderful crowd there, and congratulations on some great news today and a great call. And we got some questions. Let me just pull them up. Can you walk us through the sales process and timeline for a typical model customer?
Oh, that's a great question. It's variable. Certainly there are basics that are always prevalent in any type of sale. Number one, certainly there's a technical capability review. That is a feature function benefit review, very explicit and usually quite technical. We've done a fairly good job around coordinating marketing materials for that. Our partners have a great battle card, for example, to compete against a competitor with wins, landmines to avoid, and specific differentiators. Once we've passed some sort of technical requirements review, in every single case, we have to do a proof of concept. So if you look at the technical review, if the customer is well organized and has it ready to go, that can be done in as short as a few weeks. On the outside, it might be a month or two. On the proof of concept perspective, what we find is that depending on the customer's demand and need and budget cycle, the POCs we deliver are primarily via the cloud, so it's very quick and easy, and that might take anywhere from 1 to 6 weeks, depending on their requirements. So if you look at the customer life cycle, right from engagement with us for an opportunity to close is 3 to 8 months. On top of that, you still have to do the demand generation and getting the marketing message out there, right? So that work has been ongoing all year, of course, and we're continuing to invest very heavily on inbound marketing capabilities, which in general means we're reaching out with content, valuable pieces of information, and getting them engaged to come to us with their requirements.
Great. My next question, can you tell us more about your model for blockchain Classy Docs?
Great. So the big one about blockchain that we're working with on that side, specifically with the Ripple framework, right, has been to provide a capability for organizations to do data privacy, governance, and compliance activities on a ledger. It could be Hyperledger, it could be Ripple, it could be the IOTA framework, it could be anyone. But at the end of the day, when you look at the repository that is enabled by a ledger, there is a fair amount of information that goes into it. Some of it could be sensitive right now, or in the worst case, it could be determined to be sensitive 2 or 3 years down the road. If everyone remembers how a ledger works, its primary value statement is that it is a immutable and unchangeable storage medium. Once it's put into ledger, it's there forever. So organizations need to be pretty sensitive about what they actually put on the ledger, of course. And of course, after the fact, they might need to identify information that has changed in sensitivity level. So our focus right now has been extending the capabilities of things like Classy Docs into the ledger framework, Ripple being the first one, to help the end customer, let's say it's a bank or it's a financial services institution, to classify the information before they put on the ledger, which could be, making sure it's not private or sensitive, and then even after the fact to be able to go through the ledger again and identify where information may be sensitive now that wasn't before. There are different technologies involved in controlling access to that information. Our approach for that has been to enable those technologies, whether it's encryption, referrals to other certificates, these sort of things, in order to control access to the data. So the whole blockchain ledger framework world is growing very quickly, of course, but there are some very basic data security and compliance requirements that we feel haven't been addressed properly, which we're actively working on today.
Great. Now, when do you anticipate cross-selling opportunities to begin with Airlock clients? And can you discuss how that rollout introduction will be made?
Perfect. So we've already done all the integration with the Airlock existing customer base. We're calling into them as we speak, actually. And the Airlock team has been very helpful in not just referring the relationship to a new party, of course, but also referring a lot of the history and understanding where sales expansion can occur. The one benefit that Data443 brings to organizations like Airlock and N8 and others is that we do have that sales channel, we've got the partner channel, and we have the inbound sales force that's going to be able to expand that customer base as soon as possible. So those existing customers we want to take care of course. There's revenue there to be had. We're managing that actively and ensuring that they're happy and they will be renewing with us. We're also investing in the technology. As Jim had mentioned, we have new capabilities coming with the product line. The biggest one that's been most requested has been the ability to do a biometrics or secondary factor authentication to the applications. That means simplistically, Face ID or fingerprint ID on your iPhone device, for example, but also means we'll be taking advantage of things like Microsoft's secure authentication service, like two-factor or authentication services. Pretty sophisticated requirements. Major organizations use these every day. This is becoming table stakes for any sort of security technology. And our engineering team, including our existing and our new one with N8, are working on that space and ensuring that things like single sign-on, federated identity, and advanced biometric authentications are both supportable and enabled very quickly for the customers. So one very good example is we have one very major customer today who's asked us to onboard to their information security risk management process, which involves a security architecture review, which is great, but also involves some technology requirements that are new. And again, one of these is the multi-factor authentication requirement. So the net with Airlock is, we're essentially complete on that side. The handoff has been done for every account, and we're engaging those existing accounts with new product offerings, of course, making sure they're happy as well, and re-engaging a lot of the existing leads and opportunities that Airlock had in the funnel and in the past as well. Ready for the next one, Matt, if you are.
Oh, I'm sorry, I had it on mute. Can you discuss your total head count today and what it will look like after the N8 acquisition closes?
Good question. The total headcount right now is around between 10 to 15 contractors, primarily in the US. We have some offshore development and product QA as well. We have a distributed sales force in London and Germany, in addition to a few folks here in North America. What's interesting is the Airlock team has a very small team that we'll be adopting from a technology standpoint. N8 has a larger team. And what's exciting about the N8 opportunity for us as an organization is there's a centralized, focused, physical location, which involves a lot of the technical back-end operations that are required for proper product management. So that is product development, architecture, quality assurance, and also the facilities to support that. Another big thing with N8 that brings to the table for us that we're really excited for is the managed services offering, which has been growing exponentially in the identity and access governance space. And we're also finding with the privacy governance space has huge requirements. So the very simple rationalization of that approach is that a company might outsource identity management to N8 managed services provider. But also what we're going to be offering is a managed privacy service as well. Privacy management is very manual, prone to errors, and significantly labor intense. So any workflow automation you can do or process automation is highly valuable to that cost base. N8 is experts in that space because they've been doing it for, as Jay said, for decades. And also they have the staff in place to do a proper, fully managed service. So we're excited for that. The N8 identity team, I think at last count was 13 full-time folks. A distributed force in some cases as well, with a bunch of subcontractors that come in depending on the project. We'll be investing more in the N8 team physically and product-wise as well, and growing the product side specifically on technical resources and these sort of things. The Burlington, Ontario area is much like Raleigh-Durham area, is technically intense. There's a good a good labor workforce that's technically oriented, good cost base as well to operate out of. Of course, Toronto Pearson's a great airport, good commuting from that perspective as well. And the ability to manage, the cost specifically around housing these folks and general labor costs is effective there too.
Now, this next question, I actually was given several times in my email, so I thought we would address it. Can you discuss the process of training resellers and in integrating with all of your partners, particularly as your capabilities are now constantly growing through these acquisitions as well as your own R&D?
Mm-hmm. It's a big focus area of ours for sure. And what we'll be doing shortly is probably having one or two full-time resources purely on partner management. Don't forget the partners are not just the ones we've announced, but also some very significant market leaders that are, the 800-pound gorillas in the space. Those partners also need to be managed primarily because they'll be marketing and selling our product. In general, our partner management program is highly communicative. We share as much information as possible with them. All of our existing direct outbound messaging, when we message a CFO or a CIO with an offer or a capability or something about one of our products, our partner channel also receives that. That is something that they're able to promote to their own lists and their own people as well. We host regular partner training sessions as well. We have an onboarding one that introduces everything, and we try and get a monthly or bi-monthly session with each one of them to go through not just the new products, but also customer success wins, what is working in the industry, and what's coming down the pipe as well. Our goal with our partner channel is to not just be another vendor for them, but also a thought leader in the space of privacy and compliance governance. What you'll find in most partners, they are always looking for new offerings, differentiated offerings, because that's their value add to their customers. So a lot of our product offerings are very unique to them. And in a lot of cases, we actually clear some of the technical integrations or even the acquisition story. How does it fit into the strategy? Does it fit this model? with some of our strategic partners to get an understanding from their perspective. Can they market this? Is there value for their customers and everything else? So we really treat them as an extension of our team. Certainly, we focus heavily on them. We do our best to keep them happy as well, highly educated and accurately up to date. Great question.
Now, I have a question from Facebook that I thought was really interesting and you can throw out there. Given the existing Azure platform, do you plan to provide integration with Office 365 customers to do real-time identification of PCI data in Outlook?
Wow, great question. So today, we do support Office 365 in a bunch of different ways. So right now, you can run Classy Docs on your Office 365 client. It will automatically classify the content and visually identify it to the end user. Very shortly, you will see that in the Windows App Store. Additionally, the N8 service will also be listed there. Airlock is already listed in the Windows App Store as well. What we're really focused on that side as well is extending the capabilities of data protection in the cloud, whether it's Microsoft's or Google's as well in this case, to do more rapid adoption of PII and enable some protection mechanisms. So for example, just yesterday we had a new customer opportunity come in. I think it was from the Eastern Bloc country somewhere via one of our partners. There was almost 200 requirements listed all around identification of data, protection of data in a live fashion in various cloud infrastructures. And the good thing is now with the combinative product offering that we have, we're able to, again, say yes to everything and have demonstrable product capabilities there. The other big thing you'll see with cloud providers like Azure and Google, Office Suite, or I think it's called Google Office, Google Cloud Services, sorry, is that a lot of smaller customers take advantage of that technology. So in the past, to run Microsoft Exchange on-premise and all these things was a significant effort. Now with these cloud services, much smaller organizations can take advantage of very sophisticated technology. The last thing that I'm really excited about with these cloud service providers and these app stores is that the path to purchase is much, much faster. So we were looking, for example, at the funnel recently, and direct customers with relationships or indirect customers via a cloud service provider like Microsoft, for example. The path to procurement is much, much faster with the cloud service provider. It is literally adding to an app store, right? So this greatly simplifies the purchasing decision and framework around procurement, which is, as identified before, a pretty big and lengthy process sometimes, and also enables them to try things out very quickly, so it rapidly shrinks our PLC efforts as well. So we're really excited to swing a lot of the opportunities and potentials into that arena, and potentially joint marketing work with some of these larger providers.
And for our final question, this one's very interesting. An analyst posed a question to, let's call it one of your large cap competitors on their most recent earnings call regarding the competitive landscape and what it looked like for them. And their response was something along the lines of, we are almost always alone. The competitive landscape is better than ever for us because we're encountering these deals alone, and none of our other competitors or ankle biters, for that matter, are involved in any of our sales campaigns. Jason, what do you have to say to that?
Yes, I guess is the answer as well. we see the same thing. And I guess that portends to just how big the market really is, right? We see this specific competitor a few times, once in a while, when we go into a very specific data governance exercise. I suspect that this is the quote you mentioned is a shout out to another vendor that is across the river, actually, in New York. They compete quite a bit on joint opportunities. What we've also found, however, is that this vendor specifically, and the other ones are related to it, are very much a small piece of the bigger requirement that the customer has. This vendor specifically has no data classification capability, for example. So every time they actually have to partner with somebody else to facilitate that customer's requirements. That only does a little bit of the privacy and governance requirements that are legislated. There's actually almost 99 articles for the Gdpr, for example. This vendor, I think, covers 4. So we're covering 22 out of the box. When we add in things like Airlock and N8 and others into that equation, that number increases rapidly. And we're coming to the customer with a full solution that's integrated and also demonstrated in the marketplace. So I love the quote. I think it's great. It really shows, again, just how big that marketplace is. And we see almost 80% of the time that they're not in on the opportunity that we are. So we're happy to see that, of course. And frankly, any opportunity that we're joined with those folks, we win on a technical standpoint every time. So exciting times, a great time to be part of Data443. We certainly welcome with open arms the Airlock and the N8 identity team. It's a significant milestone for the company. And the bigger story continues to get more exciting day by day as customer requirements grow and also their sophistication around capabilities grow as well. So we're really excited to be a part of that. And thank you everyone for participating in the call, and Jim and Jay as well, Matthew as well. Thank you for the great job.
Thank you.
Thank you everyone. See you next quarter.